Your daily fix of women's mixed martial arts from the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. Be in the loop, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your fix of women's MMA. We've got you covered on Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel Delio, and hopefully your day is going well. Wherever you are, whoever you are, hope your day is going awesome. Let's make sure the year 2021 goes all well and smooth. January is a rocky start, but things can only go uphill from here, right? Am I right? So, we're nearing the end of January here, and I want to go say right now that one of my New Year's resolutions is to go and keep track with all of mixed martial arts. I want to say all, I don't mean just UFC and just Bellator, but also PFL, Invicta, and One Championships. Now, due to COVID and some states reopening, reclosing, opening, closing, California is a weird state in that reopening, opening, closing. Vaccines are going out there, but not going to enough people, and it's not out there enough to a point where actually things here in California has been getting a lot more harsher, have been getting a lot more critical in some parts of California. So, like in Irvine, California, everything there is perfectly normal, but in Los Angeles, things are sort of normal, sort of. We still don't have that many places that have indoor dining, but there's still outdoor dining, and there are some restaurants that are completely closed. Some shops, I go to some hobby shops, and my hobby shops I go to, they're closed due to COVID, so things are getting difficult, but let's hope that everything is going well. But as I am trying to go and be more diverse in my knowledge of mixed martial arts, I want to go and get into One Championships, and I want to really watch Angela Lee. So the reason why I'm excited for Angela Lee is because, although she's not going to be participating, One Championship will have an Atomweight Grand Prix tournament. And I mentioned the Atomweight Grand Prix tournament like 2-3 weeks ago. And the initial plan was that there was going to be a tournament in January. And it was expected to have Meng Bo, Nguyen, and also there was specifically said that there was going to be an unknown fighter who will be a newly signed fighter coming into the Atomweight division. And it was hyped up. They're like, oh man, who's the surprise fighter going to be? Who is it going to be? Who is it going to be? And then we never got word on who that surprise fighter was going to be for the Atomweight Grand Prix. And now, it's now just mentioned that we're going to have the Atomweight Grand Prix at some point in the future, maybe middle of this year. That's what's expected. We're going to have this grand tournament of the the Atomweights. And what's very interesting about this is that one of the fights that we'll be talking about today is going to be Meng Bo versus Tamara Santos. First off, Meng Bo, she is ranked number 2 in the Atomweight division. And note though, it's not 1 through 10 or 1 through 15, it's 1 through 5. 1 through 5 are the ranked fighters in the Atomweight division. And also, there's going to be more than 6 fighters competing in this Atomweight Grand Prix event. Also, number 2 ranked Meng Bo competed against an unranked fighter in Tamara Santos at catchweight in order to qualify to be in the Atomweight Grand Prix tournament. And this event took place in One Championship Unbreakable in Singapore. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay. So first of all, like One Championship Unbreakable, really fun show from beginning to end. I still think American shows, Bellator, and the UFC, they need to have like actual titles in their shows, because trust me, it is actually daunting for a lot of people to go watch these shows, watch like UFC or Bellator, and they just see the number, and a part of like there's some part in their brain that tells them like, oh man, I can't watch UFC 258 because then that means I gotta go keep track on what happened for UFC 1 through 257, and that is a case for my friends at the very least, where my friends refuse to watch anything or are angrily watching something if they do know there's a precursor to what they're watching or to what they're reading. So if they try to watch Terminator 2, they'll watch that entire movie all angry, being like, why aren't we watching Terminator 1? I don't understand anything here that's happening in Terminator 2. And then they watch Terminator 1, then they watch Terminator 2, and then they recognize, wow, my knowledge of Terminator 1 really didn't help me out in this show, really didn't help me out or play that much of a factor. That's how they are. And so, for them to see UFC 238, which is coming up on February, which is the next major UFC pay-per-view event, a part of them is like, well, I don't want to get into mixed martial arts because there are numbered shows here, and stuff like One Championship Unbreakable does make it seem like, alright then, I don't have to watch these other shows in order for me to get into these shows over here. And so, I'm going back to my point here of the Atomweight Grand Prix. I'm excited for it though. I am happy. I love to see the Atomweights compete. I want to see an Atomweight division become popular in the Western States. I understand that small fighters, they have a tough time transitioning into becoming like big and famous in the Western States if you are under 145 pounders. Because like we've seen Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, Conor McGregor, they're small. Like you don't have to be a heavyweight. You don't have to look like Todd Duffy to become a big time deal here. But I think it's already a struggle for A, women, and B, women who are of a small weight class. Like if you had the side by side comparison of Kayla Harrison versus Zhang Weili, who's a strawweight champion, while Kayla Harrison, 155 pound lightweight champion for PFL, I think there are a lot more people who will be more attracted to or be more appealed to watching a Kayla Harrison fight than they do a Zhang Weili fight because, well, Kayla Harrison, she's bigger. She's bigger, so you expect, like, you know, something like really awesome or a knockout happening. Even though Zhang Weili, in my opinion, is the more exciting fighter than Kayla Harrison, I think to the general consensus, to the casual member, they'll be more appealed to watching a Kayla Harrison fight over a Zhang Weili fight. And so with this fight here, we got number 2 ranked Meng Bo versus Tamara Santos. They'll be competing the Atomweight. The winner of this bout will compete at the Atomweight Grand Prix. I'm confused that this bout is a catchweight bout because I'm thinking to myself right now, alright then, so the best fighters to compete in the Atomweight Grand Prix should be the best Atomweights, right? Like, that makes sense. So, why is this a catchweight bout? Because it's no longer an Atomweight bout then. If two fighters are fighting and they went to the scale with two different weights, so it's not an Atomweight bout. It's a catchweight MMA bout. And the winner of this catchweight MMA bout goes to go be part of the Atomweight Grand Prix. And I'm thinking to myself, why is Meng Bo competing in this when she's coming off a victory where she had a stunning knockout? Why isn't she already in this Grand Prix tournament? Why does she have to beat this unranked fighter in Tamara Santos to be a part of this Atomweight Grand Prix tournament when this fight is a catchweight? What's going on? I'm confused. That's just how it is. And so, let me just this fight here. Meng Bo, she comes out to the Rocky theme. Awesome. I'm, 2 thumbs up for that. I'm a fan of any fighter out there who comes up to fun music. There was a fighter who came out in One Championship Unbreakable. Like the first fight was Lito Thunder Kid Adiwang. He came out to the song Thunder by Imagine Dragons, which sapped all the energy on me. But Meng Bo came out to Rocky theme, so I'm happy. So it was a patient start early on, very little action happening. Meng Bo is throwing out these leg kicks, meanwhile Santos is just taking them and has done nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean she's done no strikes. She's landed no strikes in the first 2 minutes of the bout. Meng Bo does land 2 overhand rights, which leads to Santos landing 2 clean rights of her own. But in the 2 minutes and 45 second mark of the bout, referee steps in, grabs the hands of both fighters, looks at them and says, alright then, I'm giving you guys a warning. We need more action. And as he is saying this, the people in the audience, because there's a small audience out there in One Championship, they're sitting in the crowd, they actually start cheering. They're like, yeah, separate them, yeah, let's fight, whoa. So the crowd was happy that the referee came in there, gave both of them a warning, and immediately, as the referee stepped back, took 1 step back, gave them both the warning, Meng Bo started attempting a couple of bombs onto Santos. So while Santos is being hit more, she is landing more better strikes, more clear-looking strikes. It's more of a case of, alright, who do you reward the exchanges? Do you reward the exchanges towards Meng Bo, who is hitting a high volume strikes? Or do you win the exchanges in favor of Santos, who is landing these better, cleaner-looking strikes? So although Santos is landing better-looking strikes, she is getting overwhelmed, or she's the one who's being pressured by Meng Bo. So Santos is being hit more, she's trying to land in some good counter hits. At some point, the right leg of Meng Bo crosses the left leg of Santos, which leads to Meng Bo stumbling and falling back onto the mat. Santos pounces on Meng Bo, turns her over into backpack position, attempting a rear naked choke, but Meng turns that around and is on top of Santos' guard position. Santos is actively trying to go for an armbar. She's pushing her off the shoe. So Meng Bo goes from like full guard to half guard. Then she gets pushed upwards to a high color guard position, going back to full guard. And as she's going through these transitions of positions, Santos, she's constantly trying to go for a triangle. She's trying to hold onto the arm, attempting an arm bar. She's doing some elbows from the bottom. Santos is doing a really good job defending herself. And I say Santos is doing more work in the ground, more so than Meng Bo does. The bell sounds as Meng Bo was saved from the bell from a potential armbar, as there's a scenario in this bout here where Santos was going for the armbar, and then Meng Bo was constantly lifting up Santos up and down, and it looked really tough for Meng Bo. Also, no, in one championship you can slam a person on their neck, so she couldn't just pick up Santos and slam her down, because that would lead to disqualification, which leads to Meng Bo just curling up the body of Santos, preventing Santos from getting the full extension. So in the first round, I do give the first round to Meng Bo because she just did better all around. In the sense that in the totality of the first round, she landed more strikes and she was more dominant than Santos. Santos had an awesome final 45 seconds, but those 45 seconds don't win you the entirety of the round. So we go to the second round. Second round, both fighters are fighting very safe here. Santos, although momentum is carrying over for Santos, she knows that she lost that round. And for Meng Bo, she almost lost the fight in the final 45 seconds. So she's fighting very cautiously as well. Santos does try for a clinch with Meng Bo, but Meng Bo hits Santos with a flurry of right uppercuts and hooks. Good old dirty boxing. Meng Bo throws Santos to the ground with a hip toss, successfully getting a takedown in. Meng Bo at guard position is trying to hit her with some hammer fists, but Santos is doing a really good job controlling the body of Meng Bo from bottom position and tries for a triangle yet again, but releases it. Then the two revert back to full guard position. Meng Bo rises up and then hits a hard right hand before she gets up. Meng Bo tells Santos to get up as they start throwing out strikes. Meng Bo wins in all exchanges of the final 45 seconds of the second round. So it's a reverse of what happened in the first round here. Meng Bo easily wins the second round for me. There was a lot more action there, and Meng Bo was able to go force her will onto the fight. The bout did go to the ground, and it's obvious Santos is a better fighter at the ground, but Meng Bo did a lot more better handling herself with Santos trying to control her. So Meng Bo wins first round and second round, in my opinion. Then we get to the third round here. Third round starts with Santos hitting a clean right hand, but Meng Bo eats it as they start clinching. Meng Bo hits a couple uppercuts on the clinch, and she presses her onto the cage. So although Santos is a lot more gifted and skilled on the ground, Meng Bo, even if you look at the back of Meng Bo, she's easily, without a doubt, a lot more stronger. She's a stronger fighter, and even though Santos is adept in Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, and I've seen footage for her where she can go and handle herself in the clinching and throw out knee strikes. Because of how strong Meng Bo is, actually, she's just pushing and shoving Santos onto the cage, throwing out these huge forearm smashes and uppercuts from clinching. Good dirty boxing. Meng Bo's dirty boxing was a thing that prevented Santos because Santos throughout this fight is trying to grab her onto the clinch and then bring her down to her guard, so Santos can go and work for submission. This works sometimes. This almost worked in the first round. Second round didn't work. Third round, Santos was like, okay, I'm going to try for this immediately. Because it took 2 minutes in the second round for her to do something, and the first round it took her 4 minutes to attempt that. So in the third round, she's like, okay, immediate clinching, let's go. She clinches. She gets overwhelmed by the power of Meng Bo, of her just carrying her body, carrying her weight, and pressing for the action. And then it becomes Meng Bo trying to go hip toss Santos. She tries to go hip toss Santos, which leads to Santos trying to press her back onto the cage. They both stumble about, but then Santos is able to get out, and the two resort to striking. And then we have a minute and a half left of the fight here. Santos looks gassed. She's tired. Meng Bo also looks visibly tired. But at least Meng Bo, she'll be fighting these final couple minutes here at the stand-up, which is a good thing for her, bad thing for Santos. Santos is trying to go through these large right overhands that are very predictable and you can spot them coming. And for Meng Bo, she was able to spot this. And there were many scenarios in this fight here, in the final couple minutes, where Santos would throw out these high kicks, huge right overhands, and she's not connecting at all with anything, and she's getting visibly tired. Meng Bo sees she's getting tired, just runs at her, grabs her by the hips, takes her down the ground, goes to full mount position, and in the final 30 seconds, It's just Meng Bo raining down some ground pound action at mount position, and the bell sounds as Santos is saved by the bell. And so the winner by unanimous decision goes to Meng Bo. A dominant performance, although she didn't get the knockout she wanted. It was a strong performance by Meng Bo, and you can see her coming up in the Atomate Grand Prix, which will be happening sometime middle of 2021. You are listening to the GSMC Women's MMA podcast, coming back after the short break here. See you soon.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to Extreme Cage Fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info. Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back. And so we got some UFC action to discuss, and that is coming in from UFC 257. We had Jessica Ai versus Joanne Calderwood. So Jessica versus Joanne Calderwood, this is a fight that these two women desperately needed to win. They desperately needed it because those two fighters a year ago, or even like 2 years ago, were in very different positions right now. And where they are in the rankings, or what their stock is, has dropped significantly. Remember, Joanne Calderwood was the original number 1 contender to fight against Valentina Shevchenko, but a couple things just got in her way. Valentina going through injuries, Valentina shooting a movie, Valentina saying that she doesn't think she's comfortable to compete in the year of 2020 because of COVID, but it turned out that she actually was. Valentina saying that she might compete sometime early 2021 instead. So Joanne Calderwood ended up fighting Jennifer Maia. Jennifer Maia defeats Joanne Calderwood. Then 2 months afterwards, Valentina Shevchenko says, you know what, I'm ready to go. Defeats Jennifer Maia. And it sucks that the opportunity for Joanne Calderwood to fight for the title just wasn't there. She never even had a chance. Meanwhile, Jessica Ai, about 2.5 years ago, was a top 3 ranked fighter in the women's fight rankings. She was right there, but a combination of injuries, her being pitted against these like vicious killers who are outside the top 5 that were bad stylistic matchups for her, it just didn't pan out well for Jessica Ai. In an alternate universe where everything was all perfect for Jessica Ai, we could have seen Jessica Ai become a potential world champion, and we could have seen Joanne Calderwood also become a potential world champion in the fight division. Now, do I think either of them are good enough to defeat Valentina? No. I think if Valentina Shevchenko were to fight Jessica Ai and Joanne Calderwood, Valentina would win. But you would like to see the opportunity or the chance of it even possibly happening. There's always a small chance. There always is. There was a small chance for Jessica Ai and Joanne Calderwood winning, but still a chance. So for Ai versus Calderwood here, a lot was on stake here. And when I look at this fight, it was a matter of Jessica Ai, her game plan strategy was go in there, clinch, and win via dirty boxing. Because in the few moments that Jessica Ai was doing well for herself in this fight here, is in the dirty boxing, when she's throwing out like knee strikes or short forearms or uppercuts during clinch. Those were the strengths of Jessica Ai. Meanwhile, Joanne Calderwood, though, she was obviously the much more stronger fighter, so Jessica Ai clinching with her wasn't going to be a guaranteed, oh yeah, I clinch with her, alright then, now I can go do some dirty boxing. It wasn't like that. It was more of a sense of Jessica Ai had to go clinch with Joanne Calderwood, maintain her grip, maintain the position, make sure she doesn't lose control of Joanne Calderwood. And Joanne Calderwood just overpowers her every time they're clinching. And for Jessica, she never really went beyond that strategy, because Joanne Calderwood, she would win out in all the striking exchanges. She went out in fighting outside the pocket. She was winning in these 50-50 exchanges. She was throwing out leg kicks. She was also a lot more stronger. It was more of a sense of, can Jessica Ai's clinch work be good enough to go and suppress Joanne Calderwood? And the answer, it wasn't. It wasn't. It became Jessica Ai trying to clinch with Joanne Calderwood. Calderwood overpowering her. Then they both break apart, which leads to Joanne Calderwood just completely destroying Jessica Ai in the stand-up. I think Jessica Ai should have done a lot more kicking. That's what I believe. I think she should have done a lot more kicking. Should have had a more better strategy that can go and divert to different directions. Because one problem with Jessica Ai was that in this bout, that it was way too one-dimensional. She was way too one-dimensional, and she isn't as quick or faster than Joanne Calderwood in these exchanges. It'll be one thing if it's like someone like Carla Esparza, where she can go in and feint it for a jab, then immediately duck under for a double leg takedown, because she's that snappy and that quick. Jessica Ai is not that quick. She kind of has to like lumber her way into clinching, and I do respect Jessica Ai for doing that. I really do. There were moments where Jessica Ai, she has like no fear, gonna get in there, get the clinch, start working, throwing out some knees to the body. I get what she was doing, but there are many instances where Jessica Ai, she would clinch with Joanne Calderwood, then Joanne Calderwood would be pressed up onto the cage, and then about 15 to 25 seconds later, Joanne Calderwood would hold on to Jessica Ai, and then they would switch positions onto the cage. So next thing you know, it's Joanne Calderwood putting all of her weight, putting all the pressure on Jessica Ai in the clinch onto the cage, and it's not like Jessica Ai was completely stomping Joanne Calderwood in the clinching. It was a lot of 50-50 exchanges by then. It would be Jessica Ai, hold on Joanne Calderwood, hits her with a short forearm, and then they break up. Then Calderwood hits like a two-punch combination, which stuns Jessica Ai. And in this bout here, like the reason why I'm very critical on Ai in this bout here is because she reminds me a lot of Alexander Hernandez, in the sense that, okay, you're doing all the right moves. Like, look at the eye test and what your strategy is, what you're trying to do. You're doing everything correctly, but you don't have the physical gift, sadly enough, to be able to be that much of a threat that your opponent can respect you. And that's how it was for Alexander Hernandez. Like, Alexander Hernandez, if you look at his boxing, you're like, oh my goodness, this kid is like throwing out these like perfect looking strikes. And then like he pulls out these strikes against his opponents, and his opponents just eat these shots because Alexander Hernandez, his striking power isn't all there. Like, you can look at his striking and be like, wow, he's doing great aesthetically. But then he actually connects with you, and then you recognize, you know what, his punching power isn't really all that much. I can eat these shots. It's kind of like Hannah Cyphers also, where Hannah Cyphers, she can go in there and throw a high volley of strikes onto your face, be a complete headhunter, but then you can just eat these shots. That's what Mackenzie Dern did against Hannah Cyphers. Like, she got pummeled to the face 7 consecutive times by Hannah Cyphers, and Mackenzie Dern is just eating these shots, and she knows that she can take these shots because these shots don't hurt her all that much, which will give her time to go and process what she needs to do, and she just won't respect Hannah Cyphers' range. Mackenzie Dern goes for something risky, goes in for a judo toss, and gets a submission victory over Hannah Cyphers. That's what happened in the Dern vs. Cyphers fight. And for Iris Calderwood had no fear for Jessica Ai's clinching. She had no fear for the forearms, no fear for the elbow smashes, no fear on the knees, because although she was connecting with them, it always felt like Calderwood's attack, like hits, matter a lot more. Which builds up over time here because Joanne Calderwood significantly did a lot more better on the fight stats. When you look at the eye tests, Calderwood was winning it out in terms of, okay, who here actually is hitting harder and who here looks like they're applying a higher volume of strikes. It was Joanne Calderwood. Now if you look at the fight stats, Jessica Ai, statistically she did fine for herself. She landed 48% of her strikes. She landed 104 out of 218 total strikes. She landed 77 out of 173 signal strikes, rounding up to 45%. Now you compare that to Joanne Calderwood. So, Joanne Calderwood landed 214 out of 319 total strikes. She landed 67%, which is, by the way, 20% more efficient than Jessica Ai. And also, she landed 110 more strikes. Not only was she a lot more efficient, and also not only was she a lot more active and less gassed in this bout, she also landed 110 more strikes. Plus, she landed 77 plus more significant strikes, 148 out of 240, 62% rounding up. And you're looking at the takedowns here. So, Calderwood, she landed 1 of 3 takedowns, Jessica Ai 1 of 4 takedowns. So, it wasn't like Jessica Ai was even winning in the grappling exchanges all that much, because Jessica Ai, she kept pulling the single leg takedown onto Joanne Calderwood, and Joanne Calderwood was not eating it. She didn't panic. She was just brought up to the cage. Then Joanne Calderwood just grabs onto Jessica Ai. Then they switch places. Then Elisa Calderwood slowly trying to go and get a takedown in on Ai. For the most part, she wasn't able to do so. But then they break apart. Calderwood just tears Jessica Ai apart in the boxing. So this leads to a scenario of, okay, Joanne Calderwood, she is just as good as you in the grappling. She is a lot more better than you in fighting outside the pocket. She is just as good as you fighting inside the pocket. And she's stronger than you, and she looks a lot less gassed than you going to the latter half of the second round. So, really, what did Jessica Ai do that was better than Joanne Calderwood? And the answer was nothing. There's nothing Jessica Ai did significantly better than Joanne Calderwood. Now, huge respect still for Calderwood here, when in the post-fight press, not the post-fight pressure, but the interview, John Anik came over, he grabbed the microphone, asked Joanne Calderwood, hey, great performance there. What do you expect of yourself in the future? Do you think you're going to fight for the title soon? And Joanne Calderwood said what everyone is thinking when it comes to Joanne Calderwood, which is the sad truth about her, is that Joanne Calderwood goes on to say, I don't know if the UFC even wants to give it to me. If the UFC wants me to fight 10 other women, and I got to fight 10 women in order to go get another title fight, okay, sure, I will do that. And huge respect for Joanne Calderwood for recognizing that. But the sad truth is that Joanne Calderwood kind of is like Caitlin Chookagian. No, honestly, kind of. She is a Caitlin Chookagian, where you've got this fighter, proper German fighter, good enough to compete amongst anybody in the top 10, not all that marketable, doesn't have an exciting fighting style, but is objectively a great fighter, and is definitely a woman. Her UFC record isn't all that impressive, but it's impressive enough for her to be a real threat, and it'll be difficult for any prospect to go and fight her. Like, she's the perfect type of opponent for someone like Maria Agapova to fight against. Where it's like, alright, you've got Joanne Calderwood. She's not an S-tier wrestler, she's not an S-tier grappler, she's not an S-tier striker, but she's like an A or a B-plus level striker. So if we can go find another fighter who is like an S-level striker or an S-level grappler who is outside the top 10, we feed them Caitlin Chookagian or Joanne Calderwood. That's how it was for Cynthia Calvillo and Antonia Shevchenko. We got two fighters who were outside the top 10, but are given either multiple opportunities to go compete amongst fighters who are in the top 10, or just off one victory are in the top 5. That's what Cynthia Calvillo was. Cynthia Calvillo had one really impressive victory, one dominant victory over Jessica Ai. And Cynthia Calvillo became this fighter who was outside the top 10 to all of a sudden a top 5 fighter. She lost her last bout, but she was essentially one victory away from getting a title fight. And then we have Antonia Shevchenko, who right off the bat was an unranked fighter challenging the number 2 ranked fighter in Caitlin Chookagian. And Antonia Shevchenko was the fighter that a lot of people were really high on, and because people want to see Valentina versus Antonia, who would win in that bout. I think Valentina would win that bout, but it was very strange that Caitlin Chookagian, who was on a winning streak up until that fight against Jessica Andrade, was fighting against this unranked fighter in Antonina. I find it very interesting. Kind of like, you know, I understand there's a lot of hype in like unranked fighters going in, competing amongst the best. We've seen it with Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler defeated Dan Hooker. Chandler, an unranked fighter, fighting against Dan Hooker, who was rank 6 but was rank 4 just a couple months ago. Chandler was able to pull away with the stunning victory. His stock went up. The exact opposite happened for Antonia Shevchenko. And it says that she came in, was seen as like an S-level striker, nearly unbeatable. She was someone who a lot of people pegged to be like, oh man, she's going to be the one who can go and defeat Valentina. And then lose to Caitlin Chookagian, lose again against another woman, and then she goes and gets a small winning streak back in. But Antti Shevchenko's, her stock from when she came into the UFC versus what it is now, very different. It really is. And so Katlyn Chookagian, Jessica Ai, Joanne Calderwood, although they are not marquee names, although I don't see them fight for the title anytime soon, although that they're women that I believe will be stuck in mid-card purgatory top 10 hell, I really believe that they got job security, that these are the type of fighters you want in your organization, fighters who can bring out the very best in the prospects, fighters who you know will guarantee you an enjoyable fight in a main card. You can slot them in as being a co-main eventer or a main eventer in a UFC Fight Night event. You can slot them in as either the opening bouts or in the midway points of any UFC pay-per-view event. So although Jessica Ai, Joanne Calderwood, Katlyn Chookagian, these three women, they're not going to have, the most illustrious career in the UFC. They're three women who got job security, and you can expect these three women to continue to go and make a whole lot of money, compete for the UFC, competing near or at the top of the card for a pay-per-view event or for a UFC Fight Night event. They're safe, and I expect those three women to continue competing for the UFC. And here's the thing, even if their contracts go out, I know Katlyn Chookagian has said that she does plan to retire at some point in the near future. They can go to Bellator. They can. Bellator are open to offering them contracts. They really want to build a proper division in the women's flyweight and the bantamweight rankings. I can see Katlyn Chookagian is a natural bantamweight who's competing at flyweight. Joanne Calderwood can also compete at bantamweight. Jessica Ai has competed at bantamweight at some point in her career. So if they're not pleased with what's happening with them in the UFC, they can go to Bellator, and I'm pretty darn sure that Bellator, Steve Coker, they're going to go and offer them a contract that they'll like. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA podcast, coming back after the short break here as I discuss Miranda Rodriguez versus Amanda Ribas. See you soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back, and so I'm discussing the two women's matches that took place at the UFC 257 main card. I discussed Jessica Ai versus Joanne Calderwood, and now I'm going to discuss Miranda Rodriguez versus Amanda Ribas. Sadly, a lot of people missed this fight. This was a huge star-making performance for Miranda Rodriguez. There are people who missed out on this fight as a result of I'm just going to discuss the elephant in the room here. The ESPN Plus app was down. I watched through all the pre-prelim fights, I watched through the prelims, and right before the main card happened, and the opening fight was Miranda Rodriguez versus Amanda Ribas, the ESPN app went down. The word refund was trending. It was number 2 in the world on Twitter during the event. Sad. I was able to watch the Amanda Ribas versus Miranda Rodriguez fight in the end, and I'll tell you right now, it was a really good performance by Miranda. So this is about okay, we got the striker Miranda Rodriguez. She's really good at kickboxing. How good is her grappling ability? How good of an all-around MMA fighter is she against someone like Amanda Ribas? And I was really high on Ribas. A lot of people pick Amanda Ribas to go win this bout. Heck, someone would argue that if Amanda Ribas were to win this fight and win one more match, there's a real possibility that Amanda Ribas could be competing against somebody amongst the top 5 in the women's strike division. Now, of course, that didn't happen, but the reason for why I chose Ribas, and a lot of people chose Ribas for defeating Miranda Rodriguez, was the fact that Ribas, her grappling ability is really darn good, and her striking ability is also strong. So you got Ribas here. Her striking is really good. Her grappling ability is really good. Her clinch work is great. Amanda Ribas has no real negative holes in her game. But she isn't an S tier or elite level of any of those general things. Like, Amanda Ribas perfectly encapsulates the all-around MMA fighter. And although Ribas is a better all-around fighter than Miranda Rodriguez, Rodriguez has to be one of the best strikers in all the women's strike division. I say Miranda Rodriguez is good enough to compete amongst the likes of Rose Namajunas, Joanne Cicek, and Zhang Weili. I believe so. The reason why Rodriguez is not able to go and compete amongst the top 5, because here's the thing, Miranda Rodriguez, she only has one loss in her entire MMA career. And it was from her last bout against Carla Esparza. And in that bout against Carla Esparza, me and a lot of people discredited Miranda Rodriguez's wrestling in that bout. Looking back now, I should have not done that. I should have respected Miranda a lot more. But looking back in that bout, a lot of people just were critical of Carla Esparza. Me too also. I was critical of Carla Esparza in the sense that she was grappling Miranda, and then Carla Esparza would just go out and do something reckless, or be overly aggressive, or try something that's very questionable. For instance, Carla Esparza gets a double leg takedown in on Miranda Rodriguez, and then Carla Esparza then goes in for either an armbar or a single leg heel lock. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you attempting those submission holds when you're in a really good position to just go and slowly work your way up to mount and control your opponent? Because the problem with Carla Esparza is that she is really good at controlling her opponents, but she doesn't necessarily finish her opponents. Like, you don't really see, like, when you see a Carla Esparza fight, you have this expectation that's going to end after 3 rounds of action with Carla Esparza having great ground control time over her opponent. That's what you expect out of all Carla Esparza fights. And so when she fought against Miranda Rodriguez, and Carla Esparza was attempting all these submission holds, or attempting to be overly aggressive in ground and pounds and putting herself in bad positions, a lot of us chalked it down as to, okay, that's more of Carla Esparza being very questionable in her decision-making skills and her trying to go for a finish, more so than, oh my goodness, Miranda Rodriguez is doing a really good job defending herself from the best wrestler in the women's strike division in Carla Esparza. So looking back at that fight, Miranda Rodriguez has very underrated grappling ability. She's really good at stuffing takedowns and getting herself back to top without getting that much damage. Because here's the thing, even though Esparza was overly aggressive and was very chaotic in her bouts against Miranda, by the tail end of things, Miranda Rodriguez was still breathing really well for herself. Like, if that fight were to go on for 2 more rounds, out of the 2 fighters, who has more energy? It was Miranda Rodriguez, even though she was in bottom position for the majority of the fights. Knowing that now, and looking back at the Rodriguez-Amanda Ribas fight, Amanda Ribas, for as good of a striker as she is, she tested herself against Miranda, and in the one instance that Miranda Rodriguez was taken aback and Ribas attempts in a takedown, Rodriguez stops it. She stops the takedown, and they go back to neutral position in the middle of the cage, and Miranda Rodriguez really showcased that she is really darn good as a striker, really excellent as a kickboxer, and she lays in one clean shot, one clean right hand on Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas falls down like a sack of potatoes. Marina gets on the back of Ribas, does some ground and pound work, and here's what the controversy is. And so Herb Dean, he's looking at it, the commentary team, they're yelling, it's over, end the fight. And I'm thinking, yeah, Herb, end the fight. And so Herb Dean, he kind of like lazily slouches over and his forearm touches Marina Rodriguez. And then Marina sees, Herb Dean, his forearm touching her. So she thinks in her mind, all right then, that's him signaling me that the fight is over. I'm going to step away now. So Marina Rodriguez, pummeling Ribas, stands up, walks away. Her back is turned. And then Herb Dean looks at Marina Rodriguez. She points at her, points at Ribas, who is barely getting up, and is like, fight's still going on. Rodriguez then just runs towards Amanda Ribas, lays in another clean right hand, and Amanda Ribas Kind of like how Tony Ferguson was when he was getting kind of dazed and confused by the tail end of his fight with Justin Gaethje. Although Ribas did not fall down like a sack of potatoes again, she was obviously stunned. Her arms were down, her legs were all wobbly, her eyes were looking all over the place. And technically, Miranda Rodriguez ended up defeating Amanda Ribas twice via KO in one fight. So, great star-making performance there by Miranda Rodriguez. Sadly, a lot of people missed out on the fight. They missed out on the opener, and a lot of them also missed out on the entirety of the card because they said, you know what, I ordered for the pay-per-view, I didn't get it on ESPN Plus. Alright then, I'm gonna skip this show then. So people missed out on Rodriguez's performance, and now looking at the women's strawweight division here, what is next for her? Well, looking at the strawweight division right now, we still have Michelle Waterston, Tisa Torres, Claudia Candela. Miranda Rodriguez, at the time of this recording, is ranked number 6, and one fight I would absolutely love to see would be Miranda Rodriguez versus Yan Xiaonan. I think that fight has the potential to be a fight of the year candidate. I think it's going to be, without a doubt, one of the best fights of the night, if and when that bout does go off. But currently looking at the strawweight rankings here, we have Carla Esparza, who just defeated Miranda Rodriguez, so that ain't going to happen. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she's gone right now. We're not sure what the timetable is for Joanna Jędrzejczyk, but if you go follow her on Instagram, she's perfectly happy chilling out on the beach, just relaxing, drinking, being at the beach, relaxing her time in the pool, man. Joanna Jędrzejczyk looks perfectly content right now, chilling at her house or at the beach. Rose Namajunas should be next in line to fight Zhang Weili for the women's strawweight title, right? A lot of fight fans want to see it. Zhang Weili coming off one of the best fights in the history of the UFC against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. A lot of people expect Rose Namajunas and Zhang Weili to have a fight comparable to her bout against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So people are excited for this matchup, but I'm getting different reports from different people. Dana White saying, alright, Carla Esparza could be next in line if things don't go well with Rose Namajunas being open to fight against Zhang Weili. We have Rose Namajunas camp saying that they're perfectly fine and they're ready to go fight against Zhang Weili. Carla Esparza, she's unsure what the future is for herself, where she fits in all this. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, we don't know when she's coming back. She could be coming back middle of 2021 or the tail end of 2021. That's still a possibility. But going back to Miranda Rodriguez, a fight that I want to see is her against Yan Xiaonan. I don't think Yan Xiaonan will fight against anybody in the top 4. If there's anybody she's most likely to fight against, it would probably be Carla Esparza. But even then, Carla Esparza, she's up there as it pertains to being a fighter who is already ready to be a title contender. She is a former champion for a reason. And so I think it's too soon for Yan Xiaonan. Even if there is a Yan Xiaonan versus Carla Esparza fight, I don't think there's that much of a high demand for it. And it basically becomes a striker versus grappler bouts. And while that matchup is very interesting, I think a lot of people, including myself, expect Carla Esparza to go win that bout. What's very ironic is that Carla Esparza, despite the fact that she's ranked number 4, she was originally going to be fighting against Amanda Ribas, which is why Miranda Rodriguez is the replacement for Carla Esparza, because it's going to be Esparza versus Ribas, which I think would have been an easier matchup for Ribas. I think Ribas is a good enough grappler to handle the grappling of Esparza, and also I think Ribas is significantly a much better striker than Esparza. So Esparza was replaced by Miranda Rodriguez because Esparza pulled out for reasons still unknown, and because of that, Esparza is now given a possible chance of becoming the number 1 contender upon avoiding a fight against Ribas. So Rodriguez defeats Ribas. So there is a possibility that we might see Miranda Rodriguez versus Carla Esparza again in a rematch, but I highly doubt that's going to happen. Also, there was one more bout that happened at UFC 227 for the woman, and it was in the prelims. It was Juliana Pena versus Sarah Mcmann. And this bout here between Pena versus Mcmann, sadly this fight will be mostly known for Pena's callouts on Amanda Nunes, because after Juliana Pena was able to successfully tap out Sarah Mcmann by submission in the 3rd round, Pena got the mic, John Anik interviewing Pena, Anik telling Pena, what do you expect is going to happen next? And Pena calls out Nunes, saying that Nunes is ducking her, and that there's nobody working harder than Juliana Pena out there in the bantamweight division. So the commentary team, they immediately start laughing. If you go on Twitter, people are just smirking that off. And then Amanda Nunes immediately on Twitter tweeted out, "I'm not ducking. You're not my league." And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, this is actually very embarrassing for Pena. So Pena and her performance against Sarah Mcmann, it wasn't all that impressive. Now, it is impressive that she was able to go and fend off the grappling, the wrestling of Sarah Mcmann, and was able to, turning around the grappling on her. So good job for Pena for scoring the victory in the prelims. But where does she rank right now in the UFC's flyweight division? Now, Juliana Pena is currently ranked number 5 upon defeating Sarah Mcmann. Good on her for that. But now we look at the competition here. We have Juliana Pena, who tapped out Juliana Pena. So right now, Juliana Pena, you are right now behind GDR. And I believe right now, if there's anybody who deserves a fight against Amanda Nunes in the bantamweight division, it has to be GDR. It has to be Juliana Pena. It has to be the one woman who gave her the most competition at bantamweights. It's Juliana Pena, without a doubt. It's like no question about that. But right now, Amanda Nunes, her scheduling, what her future is right now, it's very bothersome. It's bothersome knowing that Amanda Nunes, despite being a 2-division champion, fights once a year. And Amanda Nunes is one of those fighters who's very stingy and nitpicky on when she wants to fight. She never goes to any fight unless she's 100% certain she's going to go into that fight perfectly healthy. So there are instances where she fights somebody and then you don't see her again for another year because she's going to every fight at 100%, and if there's something going on either in her personal life or with her physically, she just, no, I'm not even going to even entertain the idea of fighting that time. We were supposed to have Amanda Nunes versus Megan Anderson months ago, and as a result of COVID, Amanda Nunes backed out. She wanted to fight until she knew 100% that she was going to go into these events being healthy, being COVID-free. And now it's going to be Amanda Nunes versus Megan Anderson March 6th for the women's featherweight title, not bantamweight. So with how things are going on right now, if Amanda Nunes defeats Megan Anderson, which is the outcome a lot of people predict, then we're going to see Amanda Nunes versus Juliana Pena. And then potentially we can see Amanda Nunes versus Holly Holm again. That's another fight. Raquel Pennington is definitely not going to be fighting against Holly Holm after coming off a loss against her. It is very likely we might see Juliana Pena versus Raquel Pennington, or Aspen Ladd versus Pena or Pennington. Those are the 3 matchups I can see happening as we see these fighters try to move up in the rankings. If either of them end up winning their bouts, they have to wait maybe a potential another full year or maybe 2 years from now to even get a title fight, because Amanda Nunes' title fight is far and few between. And you have Miranda Rodriguez and Holly Holm in front of her. We don't know what the future is for the featherweight division. And Megan Anderson, for all we know, she could pull off the greatest upset in UFC history and defeat Amanda Nunes. That's a real possibility. But right now, Juliana Pena, I like the fact that she's confident enough to go and call out the champion, the dual champion Nunes. But I don't see her getting a title fight anytime soon. I really don't. You are listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back after the short break with the news brief. See you soon.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back. Let's go to the news brief portion of the podcast here. First off, congratulations for Miranda Rodriguez. She did in fact earn $50,000 bonus for a performance of the night against Amanda Ribas with a TKO. And Amanda Ribas issued a statement following her loss at UFC 237. From her Instagram, she goes on to say, "God always in command. Congratulations to @Miranda Rodriguez MMA and her team. Thank you, my team. Thank you, Brigade. Thank you all who are with me." Heart emoji. That's what Amanda Ribas wrote on her Instagram. And Amanda Ribas, she has, Dan Cormier was talking about this. where he says like that girl has like natural charisma, and the promo package, she was the talking head for the package between her and Miranda Rodriguez, and oh my goodness, yeah, this girl is completely likable, fun-loving. She kind of reminds me of like Joanna Jędrzejczyk before she tilted and became like Joanna Jędrzejczyk before and after her fight against Amanda Nunes is like two entirely different people. We got original Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who's like humble fighter, gonna go out there and is gonna be fun, loving, super likable. And then after her fight against Amanda Nunes, she's now like supermodel Joanna Jędrzejczyk, always talking to herself in third person, calling herself the queen, and then everyone's gonna bow down to her. There's a whole lot of trash talking, night and day between Joanna Jędrzejczyk before and now. But and for Amanda Ribas, oh my goodness, she is super likable, and she's still really young. She's only in her 20s. So as time goes on, definitely Amanda Ribas will get an opportunity. She has a whole lot of potential and a lot of good things coming her way if she sticks to the right path and she further develops her all-around MMA game that she already has. And so, Miguel Anderson, I talked about this, that Juliana Pena calling out Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes responded jokingly, but Juliana Pena, she doubles down her call-out saying, it sounds like she doesn't want to fight me. So, Pena, at least she's confident. She's confident in herself. She believes it. She shouldn't be fighting against Amanda Nunes till maybe some point next year. Or maybe 2 years from now. I can't predict the future, but right now, although Pena is ranked number 5 in the women's bantamweight division, there are a couple of women ahead of her right now. And so Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she seems pretty happy. So this headline coming in from Noah via WMMA rankings that Joanna Jędrzejczyk is super happy. Issued a statement on teammate Dustin Poirier's huge performance in UFC 257. She goes on to say on her Instagram, with the prayer emoji, I have so much respect for both of you guys, at Dustin Poirier and at the Notorious MMA, Conor McGregor, but I'm super happy for DP, well deserved. It's an honor to share the training mat with you in American Top Team. Good luck to both of you. What are your thoughts on this fight? Hashtag repost, hashtag at UFC. So Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she seems really happy with Dustin Poirier's performance. Generally, everybody is happy with Dustin Poirier's performance. And if you go look further on Twitter, and even on the YouTube comments, people are generally happy with the performance between Poirier and Conor McGregor. People saying, well, this was a respectable bout between two people. Both of them came across very professionally. And Joanna Jędrzejczyk is like, you know what, I'm happy about Conor McGregor's performance. I'm happy about Dustin Poirier's performance. So, generally, there's good vibes going in all directions. One person who isn't providing any good vibes right now is Sarah Mcmann. So, Sarah Mcmann reveals the key mistake she believes led to UFC 257 loss to Juliana Pena. She goes on to write down on her Instagram, she says, and I quote, no excuses, I gave the best that I had. I fought 2 rounds to win, and 1 round to not lose. It cost me the fight, and I'm experienced enough to know better. You know when you love something because even when it doesn't give you the euphoria that comes with the win, you still want to come back tomorrow and improve. I'll keep working my best and give it my all. Thanks for the support. Alright. So generally, most fighters do this actually, where if they believe they're ahead in the scorecards or it's a certain strategy where they go all hard in first round, and then the second round they kind of relax, and third round they go and get a second win. That's not, I wouldn't call that necessarily a mistake. Because let's say Sarah Mcmann, she went all the way, full throttle, rounds 1 through 3. It really was a case that Juliana Pena was just a much more better fighter. She was. And I didn't get what Sarah Mcmann really was saying here. Oh man, she gave it all in only 2 of the rounds. Nah, so like in round 1, alright, then that's where you think Pena might have done the worst. I said Pena's worst round was in the first round. And the second, third was all Pena. And even then, the first round was actually pretty darn close. It was a pretty darn close fight. And I am astounded as to why Sarah Mcmann thinks like, oh man, the reason I lost that fight, or the reasoning as to why I didn't do good there, was because I only focused on 2 rounds. Which I don't really believe. I really don't. I'm a firm believer that every fighter is always prepped up for the third round. And I think it's ridiculous to go say, well, I only focused hard on 2 out of the 3 rounds. Well, even then, even though you probably come into fights with the idea of like, okay, I'm gonna try to win at least 2 out of 3 rounds. Okay, I get it, but it's the fight game. It's 3 rounds of action. You should have been prepped up for 3 rounds of action. Did Sarah Mcmann expect to win the fight in the second round? I'm not really sure what her expectations were of the fights. I'm not sure what her game plan was as it pertains to her effort levels for all 3 rounds. But even if you were to say Sarah Mcmann tried her hardest, like she remained a consistent pace from first round to third round, cardio has to go hit you at some point. And as the fight went on, she was visibly gassed compared to Pena. So Miranda Rodriguez chimes in on her opinion on the Herb Dean controversy of it being a false stoppage during her fight with Amanda Ribas. She goes and say during the post-fight media scrum that when I went to finish her, I saw that she was already immobile. She felt the first punch, by this being translated, so it might not be exactly what she's saying, but it's something along the lines. She says she felt the first punch and she wasn't moving. So when Herb Dean came in, he had his arms open, he said something, I just stepped away, I thought I had knocked her out. As I turned my back, I heard some screams, and he still has his arms open, and I just had to go in there and knock her out again, so I think that was 2 knockouts tonight, and the commentary team make fun of that, also along with people on Twitter saying, oh look, technically, Miranda Rodriguez, she knocked out Amanda Ribas twice in the bout, and she kind of did. So how do I think about the Herb Dean thing? I think Herb Dean really should be reprimanded. He should be. Let's get like a small pay cut. I know it looked like a small mistake to the casual eye, but really, Herb Dean with that early false stoppage, could have changed the entire fight. It could have, because Miranda Rodriguez was in a superior position on Amanda Ribas, doing some ground and pound action, and if the ground pound were to go on for even 4 more seconds, there is no way Ribas could be coming back from that. Ribas was in a situation, she was curling up, she was not defending herself properly, and Miranda Rodriguez was landing these clean shots from top. There was no way Ribas would be able to go and recover back from the situation. And Marina was in a superior position, so Herb Dean saying, okay, stop, not really saying, okay, stop, but being so closed in and being really and leaning into them, it looked like it was a stoppage. It did. Yeah, even the commentary team was like, oh, but he stopped the fight. Oh, wait a minute. No, he did not stop the fight. What's going on there? And what Herb Dean should have done was that he should have came into the action in a different angle. Like, he was leaning so close onto Miranda Rodriguez that I am not shocked and or surprised that Marina thought, okay, Herb Dean is like really close by, like he's touching me, he's like so close to the action. She's knocked out, obviously. There's no way he'll come back from this. I'm in a really good position right now. Okay, I'm leaving right now because it looks like, from Herb Dean's skate, it looks like, from what I see with Herb Dean going very, very close to me, that the fight is over. And that was not the case. Everyone looked confused. There were people murmuring in the crowd. And I was really confused also. If Herb Dean, if things went out in an alternate way, things worked out where Herb Dean, he says, no, fight's still going on, Marina, go back, Amanda, go back, and then Amanda Ribas stands up. There's a real possibility that as Miranda Rodriguez is diving in, trying to go for a second knockout, Ribas can go shooting for a double leg takedown, and then work her way up to half guard, second control, to mount position, and could work her way either for an arm bar or a submission victory, or get a second winner in her gas and potentially win the bout. There's a real possibility in some alternative universe that Herb Dean doing this false stoppage could have led to Amanda Ribas winning the bout. And the fact that that was even a possibility really shows that, oh man, this early stoppage really could have changed the fate of both of these fighters here, because Amanda Ribas was the favorite going to this fight. She was the favorite going to this fight, and if she won this, then she'd be maybe 1 or 2 bouts away from getting title fights. And so the career of Amanda Ribas pushing 2 years forward, because title bouts are far and few between, the next 2 years of both these women's careers would be very different. Would be very different based on what Herb Dean here. The early stoppage, this false early stoppage, could have benefited greatly for Amanda Ribas. Now, Miranda Rodriguez, good on her for doing this, where the second Herb Dean signals her that the fight is still going on, she just blitzes through, goes in for the second knockout, congratulations for Miranda Rodriguez, not being confused, because there are a lot of fighters. There are a lot of fighters who would go and protest to the referee. I still remember one fight. It was from several years ago. It was like, I think it was somewhere in the early 2010s, where one fighter was in full guard position doing some ground and pound action. He was able to knock out or mildly stun his opponent on full guard, and then he looks to the referee, and the referee says, "No, fight's still going on." And so the knocked out fighter or the stun fighter, within the span of like 5 to 7 seconds, he wakes up and it gets like one clean strike onto the guy who's on his full guard as he's talking to the referee, and got the knockout victory from bottom position. And then there was like weeks of protests happening where the guy says like, "Oh man, that's unfair. I won the fight. I knocked the guy out. Why didn't the referee go and stop the fight?" Well, the referee didn't stop the fight, which led to the guy being distracted and himself getting knocked out. And a situation like that where I think the referee should at least, the referee should be more aware of his positioning, and he should be a lot more vocal when there is a fight stoppage. Because in many times when these referees, when they do fight stoppages, they just go in there and they kind of shove. Like I've seen, I don't know if it's Herb Dean, but like Carlos Esparza was doing ground pound on somebody, and then the referee just comes in and just like tackles the fighter who's on top and just like shoves her away. And I'm like, oh my goodness, dude, like you're like one short tackle away from like pretty much assaulting this person. Like really, these referees, at times way too physical with the fighters, and at many times they don't even get physical at all, and they just kind of brush away. They kind of brush them off. Or some fighters have to do like the referee's job and be like, "I knocked out the person," or "This person's incapable of continuing." Come on. And Amanda Ribas was incapable of continuing that fight. She was. Now she could have, got the second win in her and defeated Miranda Rodriguez. That's a possibility, but as shown with Rodriguez knocking out twice, Ribas was just incapable of competing, and Herb Dean really should be reprimanded for that. One strawweight right now who looks to make a big splash in the year of 2021 is Mackenzie Dern, who is 10-1 coming off impressive victories over Hannah Cyphers, Rena Marcos, and Verna Janarova. I still question the Verna Janarova victory, but even then, it was still a good performance. So, Danny Robertson, who is the manager of Dern, maps out what he would like to see from his client this year. He goes on to say, "If it was me, I'd have her fight Nina Ansaroff and win, and then maybe Tatiana Suarez if she's healthy. I think that's a great style matchup that a lot of people want to see. Then, if she beats Tatiana, I think she's next in line for a title shot." I disagree with that. I think she has one more fight in her. I think she should fight one of like the big main fighters, whether it be Carlos Esparza. I say here are the top 3 challengers for the strawweight title, for Zhang Weili's title. It's Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Rose Namajunas, and Carlos Esparza. Jessica Andrade maybe is there depending on how she sees herself in the fight division. But those are the fighters you must defeat in order to get a title fight. No disrespect to Tatiana Suarez and Nina Ansaroff, I believe those 3 fighters are just a step above them in terms of the power scale in the women's strawweight division. Robertson feels as though Dern is completely a different fighter from who she was when she lost to Amanda Ribas back in 2019. He credits her new striking coach, Jason Perillo, for these improvements. I think the pairing with Perillo has been great. Obviously, her dad's doing her jiu-jitsu, and she's got a wrestling coach. I really think she's becoming a complete fighter, and I think we'll see how good she really is against Nina Ansaroff in April. I think you've seen huge improvements in her striking and in her stand-up. She's more confident, she's more comfortable. Obviously, her bread and butter is her ground game. I think after the fight with Verna Janarova, she was very, was it a good fight? Did I do good on this job? The thing about Mackenzie Dern is her name almost rushed her to get where she is. A normal fighter would have been allowed to grow a little bit more. There's not a lot of spotlight on them. They can just fight, learn how to fight, get the wins they need to get in the UFC. So Mackenzie Dern, she really is a growing name in the women's strawweight division, and she has a lot of hype going into her, kind of like Amanda Ribas. And unlike Amanda Ribas, Mackenzie Dern's stock hasn't dropped from her last performance. I still question it. I still believe Verna Janarova defeated Mackenzie Dern. I like to see Dern and Ribas go at it again. I think we'll see a better version of that fight compared to the last fight they had before. But for the future of Mackenzie Dern, Nina Ansaroff and Tatiana Suarez, those are 2 fighters who've been at the top of the women's strawweight division, top 5 rankings, for the better part of a year and a half. So she's definitely going to be facing the absolute best women's fighters out there in the strawweight division. And I'll be excited to see on how she handles herself competing against the elite talent out there. And with that being said, all I gotta say is you have been an awesome audience. I'll be wrapping up this podcast here by saying thank you. Thank you for tuning to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Women's Mixed Martial Arts Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.